Hello, everyone. Committees on Capitol Hill are getting ready for the shift in power, and it's not just in the House. We have Kellie Lunney, who covers natural resources and congressional issues here at E&E News. We have Christa Marshall, who covers energy and technology issues, and we have Geof Koss, who also covers energy policy and a range of issues on Capitol Hill, to talk about what's going on, how are people preparing. And Geof, I want to start with you because Bill Nelson just conceded the race, the Senate race, to Rick Scott. That means a potential shuffle in committee power structure in the Senate. What's going on?
So Nelson leaving opens up the ranking member slot on the Senate Commerce Committee, and right behind him is Senator Maria Cantwell, who is currently the ranking member on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. So I think she's widely expected to move over into Nelson's spot on Commerce. That committee has jurisdiction over aviation, fisheries, technology, telecommunications, all things that are really important to her state. So if she is to make that move, then his question is who's going to take the ranking member slot on energy and natural resources. Behind Cantwell is Ron Wyden, who's already chaired the committee, and he's the ranking member on the Finance Committee, which he's not going to give up.
Exactly.
Then I think it's Bernie Sanders, who that could be a fit. He likes to talk about climate change and energy, but he hasn't been very active on the committee for several years. He doesn't even come to a lot of the hearings. And he also is the ranking member on the Budget Committee, so that might be sort of a better fit for him. You know, keeps a higher profile on a lot of different issues. Then there's Debbie Stabenow, who is the ranking member on the Senate Agriculture Committee. I understand that she's going to stay in that position next year, which creates the possibility that Joe Manchin from West Virginia could be the top Democrat on energy and natural resources.
And he loves energy. He would love to.
Yeah, he loves coal. And every time he opens his mouth on the committee, somehow he ties it back to coal most of the time. That would be sort of interesting. I think that would probably make a lot of Democrats unhappy to see, a very conservative, pro-coal Democrat in there. But it's not without precedent. If you remember, Mary Landrieu was the chairwoman of that committee for several months before she ultimately, lost her re-election bid. And I mean, she's very pro-oil and gas, so there is precedent for someone like that to be a Democrat like that to take that position.
Exactly, but still a lot of moving pieces, and keeping it in the natural resources realm, moving to the House Natural Resources, we kind of know what's going to happen. Bishop is going to become ranking member and Grijalva number one, which he's wanted for a long time. What are some thoughts on that?
Well, we could see potentially a lot of changes with that committee. It's a fairly large committee, and even though it's sort of considered a B, second tier sort of committee, a lot of Westerners, particularly freshman Western lawmakers, like getting slots on that committee. So you could see some people putting their hat in the ring for that. As far as the subcommittees are concerned, Jared Huffman from California is in line to chair the Water, Power, Oceans Subcommittee. The Federal Land Subcommittee, which is obviously very important to the Natural Resources Committee overall. Their ranking member right now is Colleen Hanabusa from Hawaii, but she is leaving Congress to run. She ran for governor of Hawaii. So that is sort of in question because the people behind her all are ranking members currently of other subcommittees, so presumably would be the chairs of those committees. Ruben Gallego from Arizona, also from Grijalva's home state, it's sort of in line behind all of the people on federal lands who would potentially be chairs of other committees to take over that committee, but he's also ranking member of the Indian and Insular Affairs Subcommittee. So there's going to be some changes, and it'll be interesting also to see Don McEachin, who's from Virginia. He's the ranking member of the Oversight and Investigation Subcommittee, but he has expressed interest in being in the Energy and Commerce Committee, which is a whole different committee. So he may potentially want that over a chairmanship of a subcommittee on natural resources.
So everything is not said and done when it comes to the Natural Resources Committee.
No, and Grijalva has also said that he's interested in reorganizing sort of the committee structure, so we could see some new committees, subcommittees. We could see some current subcommittees go by the wayside. So it's really in flux at this point in time.
Kellie,
Wow.
can you talk about the relationship between Grijalva and Rob Bishop? Because it's going to be Bishop's last
Yep.
2 years in Congress.
Bishop's last 2 years in Congress.
And they're diametrically opposed on most policies, although in the last
Definitely.
few months they've found agreement on the Land and Water Conservation Fund and some
Yep.
other things. Do you think that is going to be sort of the pattern for the last 2 years?
I don't know that that will be the pattern for the last 2 years, but I do think that you'll probably see them team up on a few things here and there, big stuff. As Geof mentioned, we saw them team up on LWCF reauthorization. That's still pending in the full Congress, but they've teamed up to get the bill out of committee, as well as a parks maintenance backlog bill. I think we're going to see Grijalva be pretty aggressive as chairman and potentially partisan on some issues. And as Geof said, Bishop and Grijalva are pretty diametrically opposed when it comes to policy. Having said that, they both have been in Congress for a very long time. They know each other well. They get along on a personal level, even though they have very different personalities and ways of leading. But I think, you'll see probably sparks fly like you did when Bishop was chairman, but I think, they're both pretty pragmatic when it comes to trying to get big things done, especially when it serves their overall agendas.
And before moving on to Christa and the Science Committee, which is hot, has been hot for the past couple of years and may keep being so, is this going to be painful for Bishop? He's gotten used to being in control, had his agenda going. He's pretty strong-willed.
Yes.
It's going to take some getting used to.
It will take some getting used to. It's painful for anyone when they, lose the majority and have to go into the minority. He did say to me recently, though, I know how to be in the minority. I've been in the minority before. I'm, ready to do what I need to do to get things done. So I think, it's painful for anyone to lose, and especially to give up a coveted chairmanship. But I think, given that he's already said that these are going to be his last 2 years, he's looking to probably try to get things done more so than be totally obstructionist, would be my guess.
And Christa, turning to you, so the Science Committee can be said to be, not one of the premier committees, but under Lamar Smith in recent years, it's been wanting to get involved in a host of energy and environment things.
A lot of attacks on the National Science Foundation
Exactly.
and looking at climate studies. So we're expecting, obviously, it will be Eddie Bernice Johnson, who's the chair, and I think one of the first things you're going to see, in fact, she was already on a letter with other potential committee chairs that they want to hold hearings on climate change. I think you're going to see a lot of bringing climate researchers in to testify about the IPCC reports. When I spoke to her about who she'd like to see, she also mentioned players in the Paris Accord. I think there's going to be an examination probably of what it will take to get, keep temperatures at 2 degrees. I think there's just going to be a lot of bringing in scientists and a focus on climate. She also said she wants to review everything. I think, oversight, like all the other committees, is going to be really key to watch. She's expressed a lot of concerns about reports of scientists being meddled with in agencies, and she's a co-sponsor of a bill, the Scientific Integrity Act, that would codify science policy. So I think you could also see maybe hearings on that or a focus on that, just looking at kind of what's happened in the administration with scientists, how their research is being done. Do they feel like they're being meddled with, that kind of thing. But otherwise, I think there's room for bipartisanship on that committee too, because Frank Lucas and Randy Weber, have both expressed interest in being the ranking member. She's done bills with both of them, so there could be, some legislation that moves forward, say on RPE. Lucas and Johnson co-sponsored legislation to expand RPE's mission. So there could be some movement on some things that, are bipartisan too.
But it won't be, not to speak ill, but it won't be a sleepy committee. It'll keep trying to stay on the forefront of a lot of these issues. Oh,
absolutely. Yes.
And how do you think Eddie Bernice is going to do as chairwoman? What do you think her style is going to be?
That's a good question. I mean, she doesn't, I don't think she's going to be, she's not like a hot brown kind of talker personality. I think that she will try to keep the tone as bipartisan as possible, but I think it's too early to tell too.
Exactly.
So,
and Geof, before we wrap up, when are we going to know more about what actually is happening? There's a lot of moving pieces as to when it comes to leadership elections, when ranking members and chairmen are actually going to be selected. Any idea of any timeline on this?
Well, I know that 2 years ago during the lame duck, the Democrats announced all of their ranking members for the current Congress right about now, mid-November. I haven't heard officially. I think they've been sort of waiting to see what's going to happen with the Bill Nelson's race. Now that he's conceded, it's probably a little clearer. The other thing to keep in mind, though, is that assuming the Republicans win the Mississippi Senate runoff later this month, there could be a changing in the committee ratios, which is something that is negotiated at the beginning of each Congress between the two parties in the Senate. So I think that if they win Mississippi, I think they'll have maybe 53 Republican seats, and there could be a seat or two added to most of the committees. So I think that's something that has to be sort of sorted out too, so before we'll know who goes where. And it's possible the Democrats could lose a seat on different committees as well.
And of course, the House and Senate come back next week after Thanksgiving for the remainder of the lame duck. Are they going to be here for a long time, or are they looking to get out?
It's kind of unclear at this point. Last week when they left, there was a big meeting at the White House between Mitch McConnell and some of the Republican leaders and President Trump to talk about the end game for appropriations and some of these other items. I know that Mitch McConnell wants to do the Farm Bill and finish appropriations. That's his big thing. There's other issues out there too, like the Land and Water Conservation Fund, some other things, a public lands package. So it's kind of unclear. I think we'll know more next week. But I think a lot of people would rather get out of here sooner rather than later.
It's a tight window,
We
and
could have tax
any way you
extenders,
cut
too.
it.
Possibly, yeah.
Because the House is supposed to leave before the Senate
Mm.
on the schedule, so it's, they could all be gone once they finish, if they finish putting together a spending bill by December 7th.
On the other hand, though, the House Republicans, they're going to give up control, so they may want to do as much as they clear the decks on their own terms before they leave for the next Congress.
And LWCF, does it get done this year or
It
not?
doesn't look great.
Yeah.
I mean, never say never, especially with Congress. But, they do kind of have bigger fish to fry as far as other issues like keeping the government, from partially shutting down, and the Farm Bill. There's a lot of bipartisan support, obviously, for LWCF, but I think it's sort of people are slipping a little bit into complacency on the Hill with it because, they say, well, it's been expired for a couple of months now. Why don't we just kick it into the next Congress? And there's also, the perspective that once the new Congress comes in and the Democrats have control of the House, that maybe they get a better deal on LWCF that involves fully funding and permanent reauthorization. Right now, the two chambers have different versions of that. And, they could get the whole enchilada if they wait, then there's danger with waiting too, so.
Yeah, well, we'll leave it there, and we'll keep covering the Power Shift. There's a Power Shift page on our homepage, eenews.net. Just go to the top right. There's a reports button. That'll take you to the Power Shift page where you can watch compiled coverage of what we've been doing with the transfer of power, especially with the House moving to Democratic control. Thank you for watching.